Hello and welcome to the Hyperfixation, where our friends come onto our show and tell us about things that excite them for 30 to 45 minutes or longer, because you know what? The timer is a lie. My name is Roma. I use the they and them pronouns, and today we have a new guest host with us. Please welcome Hex.
Hello. Thank you for having me on. It's exciting to have this opportunity to be here and to get to chat with you.
It's same. I'm so hyped. I'm so hyped to hear about your story. Um, we were let's see, am I and I can cut this out if I need to. Am I allowed to talk about how we met?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we met in a group called Cozy Haven on VR chat, and ended up our friend Dark ended up connecting the two of us together, and that's how we were able to meet today here on the show. And so I found out about what you do for a living, and then I said I have to absolutely learn about this immediately. So we connected on Discord, and here we are. I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to find out. So Hex, tell me, how in the first place did you find your way into quality assurance for video games?
Well, it's actually a long story that goes back about 12 years or so. Oh no, longer at this point, like 13 years or so.
Oh my goodness.
um, back to when I was first sort of graduating high school, and I had to pick something to study in college. And I knew vaguely of this place we have had over in Vancouver called the Art Institute of Vancouver,
Hmm.
and I was interested in them because I knew that they were an art and technology school that offered a game design course. And I had been playing games since I was very small. I was always very interested
Hmm.
in the idea of making games, and I was always fascinated by the idea that that was something people could set out and make.
Hmm.
So I enrolled, and yeah, the day after high school graduation, I flew out halfway across the country, and a week later, I was attending classes to graduate with a degree, the bachelor's degree in game design.
That's so
And
cool.
it was pretty cool. It was pretty crazy. Definitely learned a lot there. Went from not knowing anything about programming to, um, you know, knowing something about it, which is, if you've ever uh, tried it, it's quite the leap to get
Yeah.
from nothing to knowing a little bit, just enough to be maybe a little bit dangerous. And yeah, it was a great opportunity to really study and learn and refine my skills. It sort of redoubled my passion that, like, yes, this is what I want to do. I'm on the right path. And then after graduation, it came time to get a job, and oftentimes people will say it's kind of conventional wisdom in the games industry that quality assurance is kind of a stepping stone in, that you
Hmm.
can uh, enroll in quality insurance at some place, and that'll act as sort of a bridge to other opportunities later. Unfortunately, I don't think that's so much the case now. I think that that's kind of maybe the way things used to be, but I don't know so much about it anymore these days. So I got a video game quality assurance job at this small mobile studio, and they were working on some typical mobile games. They had like a strategy game on offer. They did a card game, um, and so that's kind of where I got my start. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's when I first sort of entered the games industry. I was a little disappointed to be working in mobile, and then a little doubly disappointed to be working in QA, but it was a great opportunity to learn a lot.
Yeah, get your foot in the door.
Exactly, yeah, and there's certainly a lot of things that school couldn't have prepared me for. I think that there are some sort of industry unique elements to working
Yeah.
in games that kind of catch you by surprise when you first encounter them. And the only way to really know about them is through exposure.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. Actually, I don't think I told you this at all. I worked for an indie video game studio for about a year. Oh
Oh
gosh,
hell
it's been a
yeah!
while. It was really small. We were working in the guy's house. But I think they're still making games to this day. But I completely understand. I walked into that completely blind. Originally, it was for voice acting. I was voice acting for a role in the game, but then I ended up doing character design for them because it's a small place. So if you've got the extra skills, I was like, hey, this is something I can do, and they were like, oh, all right, you're hired.
Yeah, that's
So
so awesome. Yeah, that rules.
thank you. So I kind of understand of like, but I think mostly from the business degree I have did not prepare me for walking into what it takes to work for even a little small indie video game company.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Especially like sometimes the smaller places because they have such a need for talent that you do kind of get that opportunity to wear a lot of hats.
Mhm.
Um yeah, no, that sounds like a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. It was for sure. Um, but I'm not going to disclose who they are just in case. I don't know how they feel about me right now.
That is totally fair.
But yeah, so you got into quality assurance. So what does that look like for you now?
Well, fast forward a little bit. I spent about 3 years at that first mobile studio, and then I moved on to a support studio who was helping out with a number of projects for Microsoft. And
Nice.
yeah, it was pretty cool working there. I got to um, see a lot of the larger titles that I would recognize sort of in the making. That was a lot of fun. But I also had a chance to reconnect with someone I'd first met in college and sort of learn under them. They kind of took me under their wing
Hmm.
as a sort of mentor role. And it's because of them that I ultimately decided to stick with QA and ultimately pursue QA lead as sort of an aspiration. Um,
Nice.
yeah, yeah, they were a pretty huge influence on me. But that is essentially the short version of how I got to where I am today, which is working as a QA lead for AAA games. Well, working, I'm laid off right now, but I think a lot of us are.
Yeah. The that does that tend to happen a lot in the industry?
It's usually pretty rare. When things get a little more tumultuous in the industry, layoffs like this can happen. I've never seen it quite at this scale. Um, Around the time I was graduating, there was a pretty aggressive round of layoffs as well, but I think that this is probably larger than that at this point.
Oh my goodness. Um,
Yeah. So it's not super common, but every now and then it seems like the industry will take a hit. This just seems like a particularly nasty hit.
is there a particular reason why? Is it just economic reasons?
It
Or
I think economic reasons are the largest sort of driver of what we're seeing now, definitely. Um, and I think that there's also an effect where, one big studio will see that a sort of competitor big studio had a layoff of X amount of people, and then that'll sort of scare them into it. Do you know what I mean? Like they'll start looking at
yeah.
their bottom line and being like, "Oh, well, if we want to keep our edge or stay competitive, we need to be uh, in the black by X amount, and if we cut, whatever departments by whatever percentage, we can we can sort of eke out a win there. It's essentially, it seems really like it's sort of an infinite growth mentality, kind of coming to the natural conclusion
Hmm.
of that sort of thinking.
That makes sense. That tracks. Um, so I am curious. I, I did mention that I have some experience in an indie game studio, but I don't think I entirely know what it means to be quality assurance. What kind of job duties does that entail?
That's a great question. QA is uh, oftentimes I feel like sort of overlooked throughout the industry. Not always, but definitely easy to miss. What QA does is we essentially we play test the game in a very structured way, and while we're doing that, we're doing things like cataloging bugs we're finding, coming up with testing criteria, um, sort of running through organized testing structures like test plans and things like that.
Mhm.
It's kind of like playing the game in a very sort of joyless, methodical way,
Oh my god.
which sounds horrible, but it's great. Trust me, I promise. You eventually sort of develop like QA eyes or QA sense,
Mhm.
and you kind of get pretty good at finding defects or sort of breaking down game mechanics at a glance and how you should go about testing them, make sure they're all functioning correctly. Um, One thing a lot of people report is that sometimes it's a little hard to switch that off in their downtime. So they'll go home and play games, and they'll still have their QA eyes on,
Oh my.
which is an interesting experience for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the broad strokes really are about finding bugs, running what we call test plans, and really just trying to ensure that all the areas of this game that are being developed and constructed sort of as islands that all come together. That's how a lot of modern game development works. Is you have one person working on music, and then you have a team working on character animations, and you have a team working on character models, and all these things have to fit together nicely, but they all need to be developed independently because the skills needed to create these things are so diverse and spread out.
Mhm.
So when they all come together, it really is QA's job to make sure that those puzzle pieces fit the way they should. They fit the way we think they will,
Mhm.
and that there's no sort of friction being caused there. One way to think about it is that we're kind of like the the earliest players of the game, so we kind of get to be advocates for the player experience in a way.
Mhm.
There are a lot of places where they'll have QA send out reports on how the game's doing, and typically it varies from place to place, but there's some kind of indicator that our reports are looking good or they're green, or
Mhm.
maybe there's something concerning in our reports, but we're still doing okay, and their status is yellow. And then the last one that typically goes out is things are bad.
Things are
Something's
bad.
broken. If players saw this, it would be really bad, and the report is red, right? And a lot of places when they get a red report, that's like a sort of an alarm klaxon
Yeah.
that we need to fix this, that something's gone wrong here. And usually those red reports are just filled with bugs, just pages and pages. Or you open up a test plan and you see the test cases and it's like 80% red or like 80% blocked or untestable. Um, and yeah, for a lot of places that's pretty alarming. So that's also another role of QA is that we're kind of the people to pull the fire alarm when things go wrong. Um, we're sort of here to wave our arms and make noise when there's
Mm.
fire. And
Yeah.
then yeah, and because of that, oftentimes QA is sort of a bottleneck. One of the challenges with QA is that you sometimes sometimes it's no one's fault. I'm not pointing fingers here, but you'll get a version of the game that needs to be tested top to bottom all the way through. It
Ooh.
might be like a 3-day task, right?
Yeah.
And you might have 2 days to do it. because we're approaching a deadline and we're the last people to get our hands on it. So we feel that deadline extra hard. Um, and sometimes just scheduling snafus like that happen, but
Yeah.
it can be a little stressful.
No, it sounds like it. I was actually going to ask how your timelines usually look for quality testing, and yeah, it sounds like you don't usually get a whole lot of time.
Yeah, sometimes it's really good. It depends on the scope of what people want to get into the game. I think like because when people are approaching a milestone or a deadline, they want to get everything they have planned for that into it. And if there's any kind of hiccup, that introduces some instability in that planning there.
Yeah.
And then the sort of end result of that is that it ultimately cuts down on the time we have to test. But I think when people are implementing features, they're probably not really thinking about like, oh, this is going to introduce so much test time. They're probably just thinking about like, oh, I've kind of got to get this in by the deadline. For the sake of my own work and for the sake of the work I have scheduled after this, so that that all
Mhm.
flows smoothly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the end result is uh, oftentimes QA's planning involves a little extra. So when we're planning for that deadline, oftentimes you'll hear testers say things like, "Okay, we have 4 days," which realistically means we have 2 days. And that sort of thinking,
Yeah.
you essentially have to build a contingency into your your test planning, right? Like you just have to be prepared for things to go wrong in some way.
You gotta
And
be
if
on
you
your
can
feet.
exactly, yeah, and not only that, but on your feet with solutions. So if you get a build late and you're not going to be able to test everything, it's nice to be able to come back to production or whoever you're reporting to and just say like, hey, we're not going to be able to test this whole thing, but maybe we can do half of it, or maybe we can do 50% of the levels, and we need you to pick the levels you want us to test and look at.
Yeah.
If you can approach them with a compromise like that, it really does help take the edge off, and it really helps cut down on the pressure. Um,
Mhm.
and then you're not doing things like having surprise overtime and things like that, right? So,
Oh, all my homies love surprise overtime, let me tell you what.
oh, we love it. We can't get enough of it.
I wonder, do you get paid for overtime, right?
No. so,
What?
so, usually QA is a salaried position in my experience.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
damn.
I don't think it's malicious. I think it just works better for the expenses at the end of the day if everybody's salaried. But
Yeah.
because we're usually salaried, there is not a lot of paid overtime. That being said,
Ah,
though, most places, if they know you're going to stay late, they will, at the very least, make sure you're fed. So, every place I've been at has been great about being like, "Hey, Hex, looks like you're going to be here a couple hours," and it's like, "Yeah, I'll be here till 7." They'll be like, "Well, here's a $30 Uber voucher. Make sure you eat something."
okay. As long as you're taken care of, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Most places are pretty good about that sort of thing.
that's good. That's good to hear. I get I work in finance, and so I feel very strongly about, workers' rights and making sure everyone's compensated correctly. So there was that inner mother in me that was like, "Ooh, they better be taking care of you."
Yeah, no, they do, they do. But I hear you because it is. I hate going to the team and being like, even if it's like, oh, guys, I need you to stay an extra 20 minutes. I feel strongly that like, no, that's their time, and it's not fair to just come in and be like, I get X amount of your evening.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel pretty strongly about overtime too. I really like to avoid it if we can, even if it means we move a date back, then sometime next week.
Yeah.
It's not good to squish people like that.
No. I'm sure there's definitely some horror stories about that, um, from different studios and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, there sure is. Yeah, you work long enough in games in any department, and you'll come back with tales from the trenches, as they're commonly called. Um, yeah, no, there are definitely a lot out there. I remember one time staying till about midnight to help make sure that something that was sent out to we had a live game that ran on a server,
Uh-huh.
and something got sent to the server that wasn't quite right, and it was messing up the game, and people couldn't get in, and we were like 4 hours out from a solution. And I remember waiting until midnight to test that solution.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah, no. So there are definitely stories like that, unfortunately. And another unfortunate thing is that if you're in the games industry in any role long enough, you do eventually encounter unfortunate situations like that.
Yeah. Um, let's see. I know you mentioned a little bit earlier before we started recording, but are you allowed to talk about some of the games that you've worked on?
Um, in theory, it's a bit of a gray area.
Mm,
I'm not exactly sure.
gotcha.
Um, yeah, just because there's a decent amount of red tape to make sure that things like trade secrets stay trade secrets.
Yeah. No, I have
Uh,
I respect that.
cool. Yeah.
Um, let's see. So, do you have let's see. I should have had more questions actually written out instead of going, I got this. They're in my head. Um, so you've been doing this for a while. Um, do you have any like moments that you consider like big wins or maybe even like catastrophes that you wanted to talk about? Like anything super crazy that's happened on the job?
Yeah, absolutely. I always consider anytime you're working on a project and it launches, that's a pretty big win. I feel like that's, sort of doubly true for QA, because by the end of it, people are usually so sick of looking at it, and then it goes out to the world, and it's kind of like it's off your plate. You can take a moment to breathe. It's great to kind of see that relaxed energy make its way through the team.
Hmm.
Um, Oftentimes, there's a little bit of apprehension because you never know exactly how people are going to react to the game you just put out.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I
but
bet.
yeah, sometimes it's good just to walk around and discourage people from uh, refreshing the store page or refreshing the Steam page too much, and tell them like, hey, like knock it off. We shipped this thing. Why don't you.
Be patient.
Yeah, take a breath and relax, and it's gonna land how it lands. Try not to stress out about it.
Yeah. Um, so you mentioned earlier with your QAIs that you would play like you would go home and play games in your own time and you're like, "Oh no, I can't turn my QAIs off." Um, has there been any games and I'm not going to ask if there's any games that you were like this is terrible because I don't want to make you like bash anything. But have you ever played a game that you haven't worked on and went this is just amazing and you're able to like get into it and like relax and enjoy it?
Um, yeah, there have definitely been games that have caught my attention like that. I'm kind of a sucker for sort of like uh simple little indie games, I guess would be the right word. Like I have 200 hours in Peglin.
I don't think
I'm a
I've
big
played that one.
Oh really? It's a lot of fun. It's this cute little roguelike where you play as this little goblin, and how you advance is there's like a pachinko pegboard, and you kind of like play a round of pachinko, but because it's a roguelike, you're always collecting things that sort of change the way the pachinko machine shakes out.
Oh, that's
It
adorable.
is it is super cute. It is super, super cute. And it's very easy to pick up and play, but it does eventually get to a point where it's like, oh, this game is such a bastard for doing that.
Mhm.
Um but yeah, no, I remember booting up that game and being quite impressed with it. I'm really impressed by indie games more so than AAA games. because oftentimes they're smaller teams. Sometimes it's just one person,
Yeah.
and yeah, just knowing the amount of work that has to go into something like that to realize it, and to even have something that comes out on Steam, let alone something that's very well made and really sort of attention grabbing and mechanically interesting. Um, I often find myself sort of dissecting those games and going into like, oh, that's interesting, or oh, that's neat. It's also a more forgiving space for developers to explore things like game mechanics and really get into, um, you know, unconventional things like a pachinko roguelike, or if you've played Balatro at all, a sort of uh, poker
Uh,
based.
I've been
Uh,
playing, what is it called? Oh, what is it called? It's like Balatro, but it is, roulette. Bingo bingo, I wanna say.
oh, oh, that's interesting. Okay.
I really like roulette. I really, really like roulette, and so I've been getting really into that, lately, so I haven't I've watched people play, Balatro, but I haven't played it myself.
Okay, roulette. Interesting. I'll have to check that one out.
I've gotta look it up. Is it bingo? Bingo bingo bingo? No. Rogue roulette. Bingle bingle is what it's called.
Cool, cool. I
I really
will wish list that now.
and it wasn't very expensive either. I liked it a lot. Let's see.
Very cool.
So, you've been doing quality assurance for a long time. Do you have any advice for people who want to get into the industry and want to I know that, how you got in and how the name of the game was might be different for you, back then than it is now, but if you've got any advice for anybody who wants to jump into the industry, do you have anything off the top of your head?
Um, yeah, you can find a lot of job postings for game studios on places like LinkedIn. Those sort of materialize the places any job posting normally would. My advice would be don't be afraid to apply. There's also some great resources for kind of tipping your toes into game design all over places like YouTube. It's a topic people really enjoy to talk about. So you can familiarize yourself with it. There's a lot of great programming tutorials. You don't necessarily have to go to a school offering a program for it, but if you're able to, it can help. It kind of depends on where you go, but there are some really good ones. Um, the best advice I can give is, don't be afraid to apply for a job in the games industry. I know sometimes looking at the requirements for those jobs, it's seems kind of impenetrable, but I guarantee you that if you're interested and you're willing to maybe take on, something like a junior design role or a junior QA role for a while, there's someone out there who's willing to give your resume a look and willing to give you a shot. Um, that being said, also if you're more interested in the sort of more indie game space, I would say, yeah, just really try to set out and make something. And I think with indie games, simple but interesting is better than sort of any other formula, just because it can become such a time sink.
Yeah. Now you're making me question what job I'm in. Maybe I should go apply for the games industry. Don't tell my boss.
My
Um,
lips are sealed. But yeah, it's pretty welcoming. It might be a little tense right now, just because there's been such an intense wave of layoffs and whatnot.
mhm.
But once things sort of stabilize and normalize again, it should look a lot more like it used to, and it should be a lot healthier for new talent coming in.
Right on, right on. Oh, man. Um, so what do you see for what are you looking to do moving forward now? So you've been in quality assurance, you've been recently laid off, but I'm sure you're still looking around and like what does your future look like? Or how
That's
would you like it? Oh,
that's a
go ahead.
really interesting question. I think the main thing for me right now is I might be looking to get out of games for a spell,
Okay.
um, because I that sort of opens up a series of doors that I'm sort of interested in, which is the more independent developer route.
Hmm.
A lot of times when you apply for a game studio, they'll have you um, sign what is essentially a non-compete,
Yep,
and
I've signed one.
yeah, exactly right, and it kind of says like you're not allowed to essentially work on anything of your own while you're here because they're interested in protecting company secrets and they don't want to have to audit your code to make sure you're not, secretly doing something nefarious or taking from their work. Um, and I think there's also some fear there that like if you make something and then it's kind of successful, you'll leave, which is fair. But while you're in the games industry, you're kind of bound by those sorts of documents, and then
Yeah.
having being laid off, I mean, I'm kind of free from that for the first time in a while. So it'd be nice to take some time and maybe take a job that is ultimately just a job that's not really in that sort of passion space, and then sort of get out of that exchange, the freedom to work on something entirely independently.
Ooh, that sounds like really nice actually. Um, what would you do you have anything in mind that you'd want to work on? Like, do you have anything that's inspiring you?
100 million billion little things, notebooks upon notebooks. The big one that has been at the top of my mind for a little while now is I want to combine a sort of tactical shooter game, almost something like a SWAT type game or like a Ready or Not, but I want to have it be set in a sort of fantastical setting where instead of responding to, gritty, realistic tactical situations, you have this team you're kind of commanding from a first person perspective who responds to supernatural events. Um,
Oh.
yeah, so you're not necessarily like, packing Kevlar or armor plates. You might be packing things like, bags of salt so you can draw salt circles. Iron so that if there's any sort of fey creatures in the area, you have some kind of defense against them.
Mhm.
Researching, silver tipped weaponry. Um, and then yeah, sort of have this game where you approach these sort of mythical creatures from a tactical mindset. And the idea is that you're kind of like the Men in Black. Like you're not necessarily there to wipe them out. You're more there to like cover things up.
Mm.
Yeah. So there's like there's a werewolf attack in the woods, and it's your job to detain it and then like decontaminate the area, and then sort of perpetuate the cover story.
Oh, so a little bit of like government work kind of deal?
Yeah, yeah. I think it would be kind of interesting because I think a lot of times when we see uh stuff that's sort of adjacent to that, it's always about like, big action set pieces like, uh zombies rampaging through London or whatever it is. But I think
Yeah.
it'd be a lot of fun to kind of scale it down and to make it um real, but with a lot of unreal elements to it.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I look forward to seeing it when you work on it.
I might be biting off way more than I can chew, so who
Oh,
knows?
yeah.
Maybe this just materializes as a whole bunch of notebook doodles or something. But
Well, as long
we'll
as
see.
you're having fun doing it, that's
Thank
all that
you.
matters.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That it reminds me of a story my partner and I were writing a little bit, but it mostly in the sense of government institution and supernatural stuff. Um, I won't go too deep into it, but pretty much, creatures from the void show up, and they're trying to research and study them and make sure, protect humanity, kind of deal. But I'm a sucker for stories like that. I think that's why I like Chainsaw Man so much. but
Oh,
you know,
nice. Yeah. That
Chainsaw Man's
sounds
so
super
good.
cool.
Thank you.
There's something that's interesting about like there's a sort of strange intersection between like, oh, there's this otherworldly presence that's being monitored by this sort of like droning, banal government agency that's,
It's got a whole ass budget.
yeah, it's very like brutalist. Like you have this sort of boxy institution in charge of, this otherworldly, majestic thing.
Mhm. Have you played Control?
I have not. I get so many recommendations for Control though, and I'm trying so hard to stay away from spoilers.
Okay, I won't spoil anything, but you should give it a shot. You should give it a shot.
All right, cool. Yeah, it's definitely on the list. It might actually be next on the list. I've been recommended it a lot. The first time I was like, oh, I was talking with a friend about how much I liked Alan Wake, and he was like, oh, you should play Control.
I've also been told I should play Alan Wake.
I think it's charming. It definitely it's not like a perfectly smooth ride, but what's there is really charming.
That's
If
good
you
to hear.
like sort of American horror novels, Alan Wake is a really good time.
Okay, okay, okay. Oh, now I'm curious. What other kind of games do you play, like on your own free time?
I will play pretty much anything. I'm a sucker for an immersive sim. Big Deus Ex fan. I love RPGs. I love really games that have a bunch of little systems sort of layered on top of each other.
Hmm.
That combine to make this sort of rich, creamy experience. Big fan of Metal Gear Solid.
Nodding
Um,
my head. Very good. Very good.
One game that fascinated me for like 2 weeks straight um, was Dread Delusion. Have you played that one?
No, I don't think I've heard of it.
It's this like deliberately lo-fi RPG adventure in this really strange world. Um, yeah, and it just like something about it, the aesthetic and the music and just everything about it just sucked me in and held me there right up until I finished it.
That's so
Yeah,
good.
it's really fascinating. There's a lot of fun stuff in it. Um, Really unique art style, really unique visual direction. It all feels very new, but if you grew up playing like PlayStation 1 games, it'll also feel very familiar.
Hmm. Oh my god. Um, PlayStation 1 games. Sorry, my dad used to get the PlayStation magazine with all the
Mhm.
demo discs inside, and so
Mhm.
that just full sent me back to the memories of playing, like, Final Fantasy demo discs and just going through the same levels over and over again because that's what we had to play. Oh my
Oh
goodness.
yeah. Yeah, that's a
Childhood.
throwback. I remember I think we had a 5-minute timed Crash Bandicoot demo, and I remember trying so hard just to see a little more of it each time.
Oh, yeah.
What an era in gaming. Mail
Yep.
out disc.
Why don't we have demo discs again? Bring it back.
Right?
That would be fun. Oh.
Yeah, the demo is kind of a lost art. I feel like we see less and less of them.
Yeah, I know, we have a PS5 here, and they have, like, you can stream the game sorta deal,
Mhm.
and I feel like that's the with the PlayStation Plus, I feel like that's probably the closest I can get right now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I feel like a lot of places just don't do them anymore. And
Slamming my
yeah,
fists on the table, bring back demos.
there is one publisher who they don't do demo disc, but they do like little bundles of games. They're called DreadX, and they'll put
Oh,
out like Yeah, they're usually like kind of spooky themed games. Um,
Ooh.
but they'll put out like little collections, little compilations of just sort of lo-fi looking games from different developers. It's really cool that they're kind of doing something like that, like a little indie game anthology. Um, that always felt a little bit like a demo disc to me, but
Yeah.
yeah, nothing replaces the experience of popping that disc in and then scrolling through and then seeing what you got on there.
I'm wondering if there's going to be listeners to this saying, "What are you talking about? What is a demo disc?" Or aging ourselves.
Oh, that makes me so sad.
I heard somebody today, like I was earlier in VR chat. There was this 18-year-old who was like, I remember Dark was like, "What's or do you even know what a Nintendo 64 is?" And they did not. They had no clue what a Nintendo
Oh
64
no.
was, and we were like, "Ah."
Oh, that hurts. Yeah, that was such a huge part of my childhood, and just to know that like the younger generation, it means nothing to them.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Um, we have a PlayStation 5, and we also have, we got our PCs or PlayStation 5 or Steam Decks, but in terms of retro consoles, we recently acquired the Nintendo GameCube, and we also have a Nintendo Wii. And of course, we had to get the CRTV to go with it. We have a Mickey Mouse CRTV.
Oh,
Um,
hell yeah.
and it's the speakers on it are actually insane. Like they are such good quality speakers. We did get a Lightning McQueen CRTV, but the damn thing doesn't work, and I'm so upset.
That's amazing.
He's
Oh,
got
I wish that worked. That's awesome.
he's got wheels, man. A big old smile. He's sitting right next to me right now on the desk. Just, not plugged in or working or anything, but we were thinking about for making like YouTube videos, painting the screen green so we can green screen stuff onto it.
Oh, that's a super cool idea.
So it's like it's not useless. We'll make use out of it.
Yeah, that's really fun.
Yeah. And of course acrylic paint so we can take it off if we decide to get it repaired. I just don't know where to take it to get repaired.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck with that one. I don't know too many places that fix up CRTs.
I hear they blow up, so that's also what I'm like worried about.
Yeah, I think that's only if you crack the screen on the front of it, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that vacuum tube will blow up. I
I
hear
don't
they
want
kind
it.
of implode though, so it shouldn't be too much of a mess to clean up.
Shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Whew. I was scared. I get anxious about weird shit. Oh my goodness. Um, we ran so far away from the topic, but that's what the show's about. It happens to the best of us.
It sure
Um,
does. It sure does.
trying to think. While I'm thinking of a question, is there like anything that you want to share that we haven't covered just yet?
Let's see. I don't have anything too crazy. I will say it's kind of fascinating to see video game technology sort of make the leap into movies with things like Unreal Engine. It's really
Mm,
interesting to see things pick up and hit a point there of at least visual fidelity where it's sort of viable, um, which is really interesting because I feel like video games and cinema are kind of um, opposite ends of the same sort of entertainment paradigm,
yeah.
um, particularly when it comes to things like environments and characters. But it looks like now we're heading more towards a place of parody, which is pretty cool. I remember sitting down and listening to a talk by one of the people who was the character modeler on one of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. I had a friend who was helping set up the event, so he had an extra ticket, and
Nice.
yeah, it was pretty cool to get in for free. And yeah, we watched them talk, and they were talking about polygon budgets, and every 3D model made up of polygons. In video games, we typically try to keep the count low, so that things run smoothly. Polygon count gets too high, things tend to get laggy, or they won't really run properly.
Hmm.
And they were talking about how for this character, they built out this whole complex suit of armor and then rigged it all. And then they were talking about how many polygons it was. And it was some absurd number in like the millions. And we both just
Oh,
looked at each other and kind of mouthed like, "Holy crap!" Like, can
that's a
you
lot of
imagine?
gons.
That's a lot of gons. That's a lot of
Whew.
gons. That's a lot of render time too, I imagine. But I remember thinking in that moment, like, man, we'll never be able to put that kind of that kind of polygon to your numbers. Um, and yeah, just a few short years later, it's looking like I was wrong, which is exciting. It's cool.
Yeah. Oh, that reminded me of I forgot where I heard it from or what the number was. I'd have to look it up, but let's see. Polygons in uh what's that game called? Fuck. Doom.
Mm,
Okay. So the joke was that have you played Nier Automata?
no, but that is another one that I get recommended all the time.
We it was it's very good. I haven't finished it, but I've played a lot of it. It's very very good and I watched my partner complete the game. It's incredible. But apparently 2B, the one of the main characters, her ass has more than 300,000 polygons, which is more than all of Ocarina of Time.
It's that's so nuts.
So just when you mentioned that, that's the thing that popped into my head immediately, and I was like, "Oh, I can't fuck up this joke. I have to look it up."
It rules that we've come so far, but it really does feel weird to be like, oh, that game that was like a pivotal part of my childhood development is like, not nothing compared to what we have now. Like,
Yeah, but they're still special and near and dear to our hearts,
it's true. It is
and
very true.
they'll stay there
I love all
forever.
the I love all the little strange things about the old Zelda games in particular. Like I love just watching speedrunners go through and find every little bug and every little quirk in those games, and which ones can be sort of used or exploited in a run and which ones can't.
Yeah, I
Uh,
watched a lot of Super Mario ones like that.
Those are a lot of fun too. Yeah,
Mhm.
I remember watching that infamous parallel universe one, and just being so impressed that people had the patience and the time just to figure that out. You know,
Have you ever seen videos of like the games you've worked on have those kind of videos made? Like, I don't know if that question makes sense, but like someone finding those kinds of bugs like they would in like Super Mario or something like that in the games that you've done worked on?
there have been a couple times. There was one time where we found the community found a quirk in a game we worked on, and one of the developers came up to me and was like, "Hey, can you investigate it?" And that was really interesting to kind of watch someone's YouTube video of something they had done and then try to reproduce it and then determine what was happening. And then ultimately we had to determine whether we wanted to fix it or not, right? Because it was this kind of like quirk that someone discovered, and we didn't want to take something that was harmless away from the community, even if it was unintentional.
Yeah.
But if there was any sort of risk there of anything bad happening, obviously we would want to fix it. But we ultimately determined that like, what they did is pretty benign.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of just a little quirk of the game, how it works. It's no big deal, so we ended up leaving it in. But yeah, a couple of times I've seen people break our game in really interesting and fun ways.
I always wondered about that even before our conversation, just like, what does it feel like to watch these videos as the person who's worked on that game? Um,
Sometimes it is very funny. Other times, your heart falls into your stomach. It all depends on what the player is doing and sort of the impact of it ultimately.
yeah.
If it's something that ruins their game, it definitely sucks to see that. But if it's something that's just kind of like, oh, they found a really funny solution to this problem, um, that can be a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch someone play something you worked on and to know that they're having a good time with it.
Yeah, that's all that matters at the end of the day, right?
Exactly, yeah, and your community is going to play the game differently than you do, and they're going to find all kinds of different things, and that's a lot of fun too, right? Like I worked on a strategy game, and by the end of it, I thought I had a pretty good handle on how the game was balanced, on what the best faction was, on how matches were going to play out for the first 3 months, and then in like 2 weeks, the community was on a completely different meta than any of the devs, and they were playing it differently than we were. Not wrong, just very differently.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was so fascinating to see how fast that evolution happened. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it was super cool, and it really sort of drove home the point for me that you might spend 10,000 hours testing a game, but when that game goes live in the first week, you're gonna have you know 20,000 people each putting in like a couple hundred hours if you're lucky, but like 20 to 30 hours. And like they're just through sheer volume of playtime, they're going to discover things that you couldn't have possibly discovered. They're going to uh, find new and interesting ways to play the game or break the game. So that's always really fascinating, and it's always kind of a fun cat and mouse game to try and predict the horrible ways in which that could go, and try and uh, work around those and get those buttoned up.
Mhm. Oh, man. It's like preparing for when the kids come home. That's crazy.
Exactly, right? Like this whole game needs to be wrapped in bubble wrap by the time they get their hands on it. There can be
Okay.
no ouchies.
No ouchies for the babies, no. Oh, man. Thank you so much for your time. I'm having a blast right now. I've learned
Thank
so much today.
well, thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun, and yeah, I'm glad we get to sit down and chat about video games.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite topic of all time.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm confident that all the listeners agree. We're all I mean, I can't tell you how many episodes we've done on video games alone. I couldn't even sit here and count. There's so many. Maybe at least 50% of each season.
Oh hell yeah,
Bunch
hell
of
yeah.
nerds in here. Let's see, just to name a few: Hearts, Combat, talked about Pokemon, Monster Hunter, Death Stranding, there's Near
Ooh.
Automata, Final Fantasy. Let's
Oh yeah,
see.
you've had some good ones.
Sonic the Hedgehog, Let's Go,
Hell yeah,
Yakuza, Destiny 2. What else have we talked about? Kingdom Hearts again, look at there. Look at
hell
it.
yeah. Kingdom Hearts is so intimidating. I know sooner or later I'm gonna have to play at least one of those games, but
Oh,
just the volume of lore and what little I know about it and where it goes, it is daunting.
no, I completely understand. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around all of Kingdom Hearts, and I think that's why we've had so many episodes on it. But we just you can't cover all of it in a short period of time. There's just so much going on, but it's so good.
It looks like so much fun. Every time I see a cutscene of it, though, I have no idea what's happening.
Same, same.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's Mickey Mouse. I know that guy. I don't know anything
Michael,
about what he's saying. Michael Mouse, right?
Michael
Mickey
Mouse.
Mickey's a nickname, and nicknames are for friends.
Sorry. I live really close to Walt Disney World, and so I don't know why, but in my brain it's been a long running joke in my adulthood that the Disney Kingdom is like not not as magical and friendly as it is. So when you said that nicknames are what we use for friends, it just tickled me. Goodness
That's kind of
gracious.
true, though. That's kind of true.
They've got their own government. Like, what am I supposed to do?
That's scary.
They've
There's
got
just Mouse Nation over there.
there's Disney police. Our governor had beef with Disney World for a period of time. It's probably still ongoing.
Oh, what if this is like the first like corpo war?
It
It's like
probably won't
Disney
be the
goes to
last.
war with with the
Disney versus
US.
Florida. Let's
Yeah.
go. I love to see it. I'd get a front row ticket for that. Oh
It's so
my god.
crazy.
Holy shit. I know I already asked you this question, but I feel like we're winding down a little bit. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover before we wind down the episode or
Um, I don't have anything really too exciting happening. So I think we touched on everything.
cool beans? And so you're aware under the season 5 category, I named it as Hex for now, but I'm going to rename it to quality assurance. Um if anybody's got any questions or concerns, or not concerns, but any questions. Sorry, my work sentence came out. It's like, well, if you have any questions or concerns, do not hesitate to reach out.
Oh no, I
Um
hear you. I'm a big questions or concerns user myself.
There we go. But if anybody's, got any comments or questions or anything, they'll drop it in there and um or if you got anything extra that you wanted to toss in there or any links, it's right there for you.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. Oh, thank you again for coming on. I get this little glow after every episode where I'm like, I've learned so much. I've had such a great conversation. I'm so excited for the listeners to hear this. It's going to be so
Hell
good.
yeah. I hope so. Well, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun to come on and get to chat with you. Talk
Yeah.
your ear off about QA a little bit. The
Well,
most exciting topic in the world, I'm sure.
oh, it's absolutely exciting. And of course, you're always welcome back. If you want to come back next season, you're totally welcome to it. If not, no pressure, but the door is open, ready to go. So, listeners, if you wanted to reach out to Hex and ask him any questions, either through the Discord or through email, the email is letschat.hex@gmail.com. That is letschat.hex@gmail.com. Cool beans. And then you can find me on the internet at I appreciate your butt at the twitter.com or Tumblr or TikTok. And you can find this podcast as a whole at the Hyperfix Pod at TikTok, Tumblr, and Twitter. Let's see. And this whole podcast is thanks to the Moonshot Network. You can find them at Moonshot Pods on the twitter.com or Moonshot Network on Twitch, or that might be backwards. I'm going off of memory. Um, and thank you to our patrons who support this show. You can find our Patreon at patreon.com/the Hyperfixation. And thank you to Offuscate, that is OFUSKATE, for our intro and outro music. You can find them on Twitter, Instagram, and SoundCloud. And I think that's all the plugs. I think I did it. I think I did all the plugs from memory. All right. Well, be safe, everyone. Don't die. Drink your water. Take your vitamins. And badoo.
See ya.